Gonna be live. Let's go ahead and check our audio. Check, 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 check. Check, 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 check. Okay, nice. All right, so I'm gonna give that a second just so I can see the swings. Oh. Gonna need to definitely do some stretching because just hit 50 putts in here and not ready to. Hey, Adventure Brothers in the chat. Low-key Scott's in the chat. What's up, guys? Welcome to the stream. Just getting loosened up to hit some balls. Oh. Give you a sneak preview because you're here in the chat early, right? But we just started a new series, filming a new series, trying to finally stop missing so many short putts on the golf course. And we made 47 in a row to start. The goal was 45 out of 50 overall. And we ended up making 49 out of 50, day one. But 47 in a row is probably a PR. I don't think I've ever, pretty sure I've never made 47 in a row on the Pels Tutor. It was all one take, too, so, you know, somebody's out there's like, no, you didn't. I'll be like, here's the full, unabridged. Low-key Scott says, absolutely cured my slice. Thank you so much for the tips 2 streams ago. Amazing. Well, that's very, very exciting feedback. Thank you very much for coming back to share it with us, number one. And I'm really glad that it worked, right? Isn't it so much more fun hitting, you know, nice straight golf shots? You don't have to worry about wandering into the woods like, can I find the ball? Can I not find the ball? It's great. It's amazing. And then, like I did a couple times when I played yesterday morning, you make a swing that comes out of nowhere and you're like, oh man, it's gone the complete wrong direction. And sometimes there's a pond over there. So didn't listen to DJ at least once. You know, when DJ says the most important part about hitting a fade is making sure it fades. Well, on a hole with water down the left, I didn't make sure it faded. I actually kind of pulled drew it right into the water. Made a bogey. Almost saved par. It was a par 5. Yeah, not our best playing yesterday. Got a bit tired. A couple doubles, sloppy. MJ Vibe says, good bro, like done. I'm not sure I know what you mean, but tell me more. Adventure Brothers, what's your favorite shot you have ever hit? Oh, that's a good question. In a tournament round once, I played there's 3 holes at what used to be my home course. There was a par 5, a par 4, and a par 5. And I made eagle, double bogey, eagle. Played those 3 holes 2 under with 2 eagles and a double. So that's not one shot necessarily. Favorite like single shot I've ever hit maybe? I lipped out a 7-iron at Cog Hill. That would have been my first and only hole-in-one. That was a pretty memorable one. I hold a 9-iron for eagle on the first hole in a college tournament. That was pretty fun. It was a little nerve-wracking, to be honest, like standing on 2T. Like, all right, I'm already 2 under. Like, try not to mess this up, which I inevitably did. I think I came in with like 73 or 4 that day, even starting 2 under. Oh, yeah, definitely going to have to do a little more loosening up. Just get these out of the way here. Favorite shot I've ever hit? What a good question, Adventure Brothers. Thanks. Frosty says, why do you kind of look like Dale Steyn, the South African? I don't know who that is, but you could tell me more. Low-key Scott says, like Don, I've hit over 500 balls without hitting a slice. Yeah, that's amazing, right? Isn't it so much more fun? What I'm really working on is fighting this tiny little, this little sway I start doing sometimes to start my backswing. Like I'll just start going this way, and it's just creating a little bit of inconsistency when I don't pay attention to it. So I'm really almost trying to feel like I'm leaning forward some to start the swing, right? The opposite, you know, in the hopes that, you know, I don't want to actually be leaning forward, right? Kind of reverse tilting, but I don't want to be pushing back this way either. So always something to work on. But as you'll see, I think I already uploaded a short that'll come out in a few days about, you know, the current state of my game in one sentence. And, you know, I hit another tee shot right down the middle of the fairway, and I was just like, man, the swing is so good, and the putting is so frustrating right now. And it just kind of came out of me in that one sentence, and after I just, you know, had back-to-back 3 putts. And that really is it. It is really frustrating to hit good golf shots and make bogeys, or, you know, not hit good putts when you hit great iron shots to give yourself, you know, good chances at birdies, that kind of thing. But, you know, that's what's crazy about golf. Every day is different. We just got to keep coming back. Frosty says, like, you could Google the name Dale Stein. You'll see what I mean. All right, let's do that. Dale Stein, South African cricketer. Yeah, I kind of see it. He's got some tats. Regarded by many as the greatest bowler of the modern era. Wow, pretty cool. Scott says, I'm much more eager to play golf now. I'm now working on the short game. Amazing. Free the gold, stop the genocide. I don't know what free the gold is, but yeah, we should definitely stop genocide. Yizan said hi. Hey, Yizan. Oleg says, can you help make impact position make sense to me? Also, do you think about impact or just swing through? You definitely have to practice impact and understand what you want the club to look like and what you want it to feel like, right? So I'm a huge proponent. You guys have heard me on here telling people that are beginners to golf, right? Saying learn impact and work backwards, right? Learn how to strike a ball solidly and hitting it, you know, somewhat straight with like a slow 50%, you know, waist to waist type swing. So impact is definitely super important, right? You've heard me say, you know, Jim Furyk and John Rahm have very different golf swings, obviously, if you were to watch them, but their impact positions are very similar, right? There are some key tenets, if you will, that we want for good impact. So what I like, one thing you could do to practice it, Oleg, is just once you understand what we want it to look like, right? Which is, you know, the hands, the shaft is leaning forward towards the target, right? We're coming into the ball with a descending angle, some amount, and our hips have rotated to the left, you know, open to the target, right? So if we think of those as our key tenets, well, you can practice getting into that position, right? Presetting it. And I do this a lot, right? When I start, my swing gets a little off or I'm not striking it well, right? Just get in here, practice what you want it to feel like, and then make some little swings and just feel how presetting that, it makes it much easier for your body to get back to that position. And that can be super helpful to training impact. Funny Channel said hi. Hey, Funny. JM said, happy B-Day, Nick. You almost got me. Aditya, appreciate your hard work, man. You're welcome, Aditya. Adventure Brothers, how do you hit your chip shots? Because I've learned 2 ways. I don't know which is better. Great question. So number one thing I would tell you, if you're just getting started, is learn, when you're practicing, learn one chip shot that you feel like you can consistently get out of the rough, out of the bunker, and onto the green in one shot, right? Our goal when we're chipping around the green, always, 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 have our next shot be a putt. Could be from 30 feet, but we've got to be putting after we chip, right? So what I would tell you for a pretty standard chip shot, right? You can see I was doing a bunch of chipping practice on the live stream yesterday, and I'm that guy who needs to clean his clubs more, but lots of short game practice recently with our 60 degree. So for a pretty basic shot, right, I would just open your stance slightly, bring the feet closer together. I like to feel like I'm slightly open to the target, right? You know, but just whatever feels comfortable. stand nice and close to it. I've got, a little bit of the grip, choke down on the grip some, right? And then from there, it's just, for me, not a lot of wrist hinge. It's just a pretty exaggerated, almost like a putting stroke, right? Just turning and chipping the ball, right? So just kind of, keeping this triangle between our arms and this club intact. And we kind of just swing the triangle around us, right? And you almost feel like it's just a bigger putting stroke. You can certainly, once you develop a shot that you feel very comfortable with, play around with opening the face, closing the face, trying to hit lower ones, higher ones. But again, if you're just getting started, learn that pretty basic chip shot that you can get on the green consistently, and you'll start having a much better time out there. Bugs Savini said hi. Hey, Bugs. Adidia is trying to gas everybody up to like the video. Amazing. Thanks, Adidia. Could you show head on how that preset position looks like? I could try. I don't know if I don't have a place to put the camera, unfortunately, over there. Well, let's do it this way. Right, so if I'm trying to preset impact, my head is, and say this is the golf ball I was going to hit. It's kind of in line or even slightly behind that golf ball, right? So I'm staying, pretty centered, and then just staying kind of right on it, right? I don't want to get too far in front of it this way, then I'm going to be steep, or moving backwards. Obviously, that's going to be bad. But again, just trying to feel like it's pretty centered and like right. Even when I get into that position, I'm not noticing my head or my neck really moving much at all, right? Because it's just kind of on the ball here, and then boom. Does that help? Jim says, thank you for the great video. You're welcome. Did you know that if a golfer punches you, he will make you lose consciousness many times more than a boxer? That swing will come with air and the smell of a hospital. Okay, Mark. Craig says, I keep topping the ball with driver off an orange Castle tee. Do you have any advice on how I can fix this? I don't know what an orange Castle tee is. But if you're topping the ball, right, that means that the plane, right, you're swinging over the ball, right? So if instead of having the club interact with the ball like this, right, where the center of the face is hitting it and launching the ball up into the air, if you're topping it, right, you're swinging over the top and hitting this top part of the ball, right? So your impact position, your low point is too far forward in front of the ball. So to practice that, especially with driver, right, what I'll have you, suggest that you do is hit some shots with like a half swing and just really practice trying to feel like you're launching it up into the air with a low to high type swing, right? So you've got your driver teed up, and if you're topping it, right, it's because you're swinging too far in front this way, right, and hitting the top of the ball. What we want to have you do is hit up on it, right? So you can just make a bunch of small swings and really feel like you're sending that ball up into the air, right? See how you do with that. That should help with the topping the ball question. Josh, how to stop a slice with a driver? Good question, Josh. So if you're slicing it with driver, let's first diagnose, what's causing that to happen. These tees aren't the best. That's okay, right? If you're slicing it, the face is a bit open, and your path is likely some amount across the ball, right, from the outside to the left. So we need to neutralize both those conditions, right? Instead of hitting like a spinny drop shot, right, we want to hit like a powerful forehand, right? Because we want to take spin off, we want to launch the driver up into the air, and ideally, or hit it pretty straight or with a little draw, right? So what I'd have you do is, now that we understand what's happening, knowing that we need to neutralize the face, get the face more closed and the path less across it, right? More neutral kind of from the inside. Grab your head cover, put it down just behind the ball and to the outside this way, right? Such that if you do make that steep swing where you come across it, you're going to hit that head cover. So this is going to train you to shallow out the path of the club, right? Have it come more from the inside so that you can hit the ball and miss that head cover, right? But you have to do that from the inside this way. Another great kind of functional drill you can do that I really like, one of the ways I was taught when I was struggling hitting a big slice is just learn how to hit a big hook, right? So set up as if you were going to hit it to center field, and then what you're actually going to do is hit a big draw down the left field line, right? And just pay attention to when you let your brain take over and just say, okay, the task is hit the ball over there to the left, right? Pay attention to what happens. Your body's going to start closing the club face sooner. You're going to adjust the path of the club, right? And that can be a great way to start developing those skills, right? And really get it going over to the left. So again, we're trying to learn these skills of club face control and path control, not just, hey, here's the drill that I can do that's going to work. So hopefully that helps, Josh. Bo Show says, what's your favorite course to play or dream course? I think it's probably Pebble Beach, just because I haven't played it yet. I played a lot of really cool golf courses, so I'm super lucky in that regard. But yeah, Pebble Beach is probably my number one at the moment. Oleg says, super helpful. Yes. Yeah, you're welcome. Christopher says, why do my irons go the same distance? Good question, Christopher. Well, if that's the case, I imagine, right, that something in your, launch conditions or your strike is, negatively impacting how far your longer irons go. If I had to guess, I'd say you'd say, well, I hit my 9-iron 140 and I hit my 8-iron 150, but then I hit my 6-iron 155. Or my 4-iron goes 165, right? Like not a big enough gap. And some of that does, unfortunately, have to do with how much speed you can apply to the ball, right? So you do need some amount of speed to launch those lower wafted irons up into the air. So that can definitely be a place to start if those longer irons aren't really getting up into the air. But if not, right, making sure that, if you do have enough speed, that your impact conditions are, optimal such that you can get the extra distance out of those longer clubs, right? Because they are longer, you should be able to swing them faster. That's what physics says anyway, right? So really dialing in your impact conditions, making sure you're striking the ball in the center of the face would be a great place to start. And to do that, right, there's some drills. I like to hit balls with this piece of tape right behind the ball, right? And that's teaching me, to control the low point in my swing. If I hang back on it and I hit it fat, right, I'm going to hit that tape. If I thin it, it's going to feel terrible. So this is a good way to train impact, making sure that you're hitting the ball solidly. So give that a try. Alex says, how do I stop hooking my driver? Hey, Paul's back in the chat. What's up, Paul? I was just thinking about you, Paul, because I was filming a putting challenge video. I'm going to be doing 50 putts on the Pels Tutor every day for the next 30 days. Today was day 1. We made 49 out of 50. That was pretty cool. Actually made the first 47 in a row. That was definitely a first. But so same idea, right? If you're hooking the driver, I think that was Alex's question. Or Alex says, how do I stop hooking my driver? Right, so the opposite, Alex. If you are delivering the club too much from the inside and the face is too shut, well, you're going to produce that big right to left, that big hooking ball flight, right? So same idea, just on the other side. What I ask you to do is, learn how to, when you're on the range, practice hitting some big fades, right? Learn how to hit a big slice. What do you have to do to hold that club face off, to keep it from over-rotating? How do you adjust the path to, if you're hitting a big hook, right, it might be starting way to the right and then hooking. How do you bring that in, neutralize that club path into the ball to have it start more down our target line? Again, this idea of fighting fire with fire, I think, is super beneficial, right? If you're saying, well, I can't stop hooking the ball. Well, teach yourself to hit a big cut. So Oleg, I think the forehand thing is more of a feel, right? I think you still need to generate speed in the right way to not lose distance. Justin says, what's the way to hit my irons? I'm new to golf. So this is a great question. A bunch of our listeners and watchers are beginner golfers. So this tip can be super helpful for all of you guys. And for me, right? I do this drill sometimes. But I want you to understand, especially when you're swinging irons, right? This is a very small target, the center of this club face. And we're swinging this club, I don't know, between like 80 and 110 miles an hour into the ground, right? So with that in mind, let's understand this is a technique that requires a high degree of skill. And when you're trying to develop skills like that, making it smaller and making it slower is a really good place to start, right? So if you want to hit your irons, forget about all the stuff that happens way up here, right? You watch golf, you see pros on TV with these big, long, beautiful swings, right? That will come into play later, but if you truly are new to golf, I want you to learn how to hit balls. Grab a 9-iron or pitching wedge, maybe an 8-iron, right? Some sort of short club, and set up to it, right? I assume you've learned some kind of grip fundamentals, right? If you're already talking about, ball striking improvement, right? But take your setup, your stance, and you're just going to try to hit this club like 50 yards. But you're going to make sure that it flies pretty straight, towards your target, and that you develop that feeling of that nice compression, right? When we strike the ball first and then the turf. On the golf course, that would produce a nice divot, right? Where you hit the ball and then the grass goes flying down the fairway. But again, just hit as many balls as you can at this slow speed, right? Until you feel like 10 out of 10 times, or maybe 9 out of 10 times, where you try to make that little 50-yard swing, you're going to hit it solidly and it's going to fly pretty straight through the air. Then, once you feel like, okay, I'm really at, a 9 or 10 out of 10, you can add a little bit more speed, right? That will make it harder. And you might only be able to do, 6 out of 10 at first. And then you start building that up. You start adding a little more speed, right? So you got to learn impact first, and then add speed to the swing, right? Because if you're making 100% swing, if you grab a 9-iron, you're like, I got to try and hit this 150 yards. And by the way, I'm going to teach myself to deliver perfect impact and a nice descending blow. I'm going to stay nice and balanced, and still strike the center of the club face. If you're new to golf, it's just not really an effective way to get better, I don't think. I spent a long time just trying to ignore that. Because I didn't think it was cool to hit little shots and just practice, like that. It is. It's really effective. It's a really, really good way to, work on your swing, change your technique. Lots and lots of good things can come from that. Let me try to catch up here. If I missed your question, guys, sorry, but I'm doing my best. Julie says hi. Hello. Tips to stop pulling shots, even though I'm flushing them, they're just pull draws. So Tyrone, good news is if you're already flushing it, that's a great place to start from. But the pull, right, you can do the same drill I was just doing for the slice question, but you're just going to work on the path here, right? So put this head cover down to the outside of your ball, right? And this is if you're pulling it, right? If you're approaching the ball with the path across, right to left relative to your target line, that's what you're describing, right? In a club face that's pretty square. If it's not, a massive hook or pulling and cutting back to the right. But that can help you train that if you do make that steep swing, right, and get the path going out to the left, outside here and then across this way, give yourself a physical barrier to say, okay, I need to get this ball started out to the right. You could also, I like sometimes putting an alignment stick in the ground in front of me, right, or even use 2 of them to make like a field goal, right? And say, I have to start the ball to the right of this stick. If you're trying to practice not hitting a pull, right? And give yourself a task orientation to say, that this is the target. The target is the right side, getting the ball to start further right. And that would be a way you could work on neutralizing your path, getting it, closer to down your target line. Josh says, best driving range drill for accuracy control. I like mixing up your targets, right? So, not hitting, if you're working on accuracy, not hitting at the same flag or same spot for more than a couple swings in a row. That can be a good way to really, see where your alignment's at, see where your ball flight's at. Gerard said hi. Hey, Gerard. DBP's back in the chat. What's up, DBP? DBP's a satisfied returning viewer. Paul says, you must be getting a feeling for it. John, works for your driver. Give you a shorter backswing and longer follow through. The swing will balance you. Yeah, that all sounds really good to me. Alex said, thank you. You're welcome, Alex. Loki Scott says, restringing my guitar while watching this. Golf and guitar, my two favorite things. Yeah, it's great to have. I wish I had a musical instrument skill. So yeah, guys, swing's feeling really good. Putting has just been a nightmare. All right, Tyrone, I think I helped you with that question. George says, keep your head down. I will. And Vixity, I have a problem keeping my left arm straight. Any tips? Yeah, I think it is an awkward thing to get used to feeling, right? But I want you to try to feel almost like the extended left arm is a result of doing the right things in your takeaway, not like I keep my left arm straight and then good things happen, right? Because our goal to swing this club, with some speed and, in a way that works well with physics, right? We need to create a large arc so that this club head can travel further than our hands do, right? To create that speed. So to do that, we need to keep this club head as far away from us as possible, right? So when I make my takeaway, I don't want this club head in here where I can touch it, right? This is, going to be steep and narrow, right? I need some width. I want to keep this club head away from me where I can't get to it, right? So that it creates that wide arc, right? And in doing that, if we said, hey, we want to keep this arc as wide as possible, well, what happens to my left arm, right? It's extending to make that arc, right? And then we turn around our body. This is how we, make a backswing, right? But that left arm being straight is more a result of trying to make this big arc, right? So hopefully that helps. Cuban Kai says, I'm new to golf. I slice it a lot and don't know where I'm aiming and where to stand towards the ball. Could you help me with that? Absolutely. So great question. Hey, Paul's in here and Kraken's in here. Welcome, guys. Jacob's in here. So the question about slicing it and where you're aiming, right? So great drill for alignment. What I would have you do is get a couple sticks like this. You can also use other golf clubs. Don't feel like you have to spend money to do any of these drills, right? And let's say one of these is our target line. This is where we're trying to hit it. Our ball will be somewhere in here, right? And we actually don't even need this one yet. So I'm going to make my stance like I'm going to set up to the ball, right? And then I'm going to drop this club down, or you could use it, the second stick, but I'm going to use the club. Drop this down, right, where my feet were, and then take a step back. And you want these to be pretty parallel, right? This is a way to check your alignment. If you set up, really open to it, right, this can cause people to slice, where you start slicing it. So you're like, oh, I'll just aim more left, right? It'll look something like that, right, where the angle, gets bigger. And vice versa, closed would look the opposite, right, pointing, out to the right. So that's a way where you can practice and just train yourself to say, I don't even have to hit a ball. I can practice my alignment by just doing this over and over again, right? And, to my eye, I'm like, oh, it's fractionally open, right? So maybe I would get in the next time and go, okay, a little more shut. Let's see how that looks, right? Boom, spot on. Nice and parallel train tracks, right? So that's a drill you can do even without hitting golf balls, right? To, practice your alignment, work on that stuff. And if you're slicing a Cuban Kai, right, again, remember, we want this club head, especially with the driver, right, kind of low to high from the inside, right? Don't be afraid to slow your swing down. Say, hey, can I, at what speed do I have to swing it to hit it straight? And it might be 50%. So hopefully that helps. Let's check in on the chat here. Jacob says, I've recently got fitted into S-Flex standard length irons as a high handicap. I'm struggling a bit with consistency. My old irons were half-inch short and standard R-Flex. Any tips? So I think Well, number one, trust your fitter, right? If you went somewhere reputable and you feel good about the fitting experience that you had, I think it's definitely normal to have some period of adjustment where you're saying, hey, I used to have these shorter clubs and the flex was different. Now it's taking me a little while to get used to them. I think, understanding that getting better is a non-linear process, right? I'm experiencing this myself. Like I'm changing my swing a bunch. My handicap's going up, not down, even though I'm practicing more, right? So, there's going to be ups and downs in this journey to hopefully getting that line moving up and to the right, in terms of our improvement. So I would say just stick with it, Jacob. Larry Leamer says, I hit my short irons pitching wedge decently, but I'm terrible with my long irons. Is there a change in the stance, grip, etc. between these clubs? No, not in my mind in terms of the stance or the grip, but it is this is a common thing you'll hear with beginner golfers because, right, I'll grab a 9 iron and a 4 iron so we can compare. It's time to eat? Okay, I'll be in shortly. So this is a 9 iron, right? It's a short club. See the angle it sits on, right? Compared to the 4 iron, this is much flatter and longer, right? So understand that these clubs are different. And as a result of that, if your swing, and this is something that a lot of beginners struggle with, so don't feel like it's just you, is when we make a swing that is with the takeaway inside and then steepening, right? Well, with this club, it's already pretty upright. You can get away with that. There's enough loft on it. You can hit these short clubs pretty decently with a fair amount of steepness in your swing, right? Adjusting for it, your body will make some adjustments. But when you have this longer, call a 4 iron, right? It's going to be much more difficult to make that steep swing and get a good result because it's a longer club and there's so much less loft on it, right? So it's going to be that much less forgiving to that steepness. And again, I would remind you that hitting long irons is just harder, right? It's a longer club. We're swinging it faster. So give yourself a little bit of grace, right? And remembering that like even pros sometimes struggle hitting 3, 4, or 5 irons, right? So just stick with it and understand that, it's a process. Marco says, how to hit a driver for beginners. Go slow and try to make sure you're hitting up on it, right? We want some ascending angle into the ball, right? So practice making some small swings where you're finding the center of the club face and hitting the ball, pretty straight down your target line, and then build it up from there. Sam says, I can't get any consistency. I think probably just, more reps, right? If you're able to produce a good swing occasionally, just probably got to work on more reps. What is the recommended distance to stand from the ball for iron, like the right setup? Great question. So setup stuff is super important because, again, that's one of the easy things that we can control. We can control all the stuff that happens before we hit the ball, right? Once you hit it, you can get a gust of wind, lawnmower goes off in your backswing, right? All kinds of stuff can happen. But we can have a solid pre-shot routine and control as much of that process before hitting the ball as we can. So with that in mind, right, if you're setting up to an iron, what I would suggest is kind of a litmus test, right? A place to start is where do my arms hang naturally when I make a stance and set up to the ball, right? That's usually a pretty good place to start, right? If I were to just be here and just try to get all the tension out, where do my arms hang naturally, right? Bring them together. That's a pretty good place to start. And you'll find that if say I'm standing too far away, right? And I drop the club, my arms are going to move back towards me. Right? So that can be a good way to say, am I too far? Am I too close to the ball? Again, if you're really close to it in here and you drop that club, they're going to move away from me, right? Another easy one that I was taught, right? So again, feeling where those arms hang naturally, right? But then also use the width of your hand or the length of your hand, right, from the end of the club to your body as another kind of cheat sheet way to think about how far to stand from it, right? And you'll find that between those two, you know, if you practice that, you should come to a pretty comfortable, you know, consistent type setup position. How do you control distance with pitching between 30 and 90 yards? Any tips? I'm also soliciting tips on this one, guys, because it's an area that I have spent a lot of time practicing and still struggle with some. So my current philosophy is trying to use a wedge matrix, right? So I went on TrackMan, I just rented an hour of time, and I hit all my wedges with a half swing, a 3/4 swing, and a full swing, which for me is really like 90%, right? I don't like hitting wedges, you know, full out, like as hard as you might hit like a 6-iron. So anyway, so I have those 3 swings, and then I have 3 wedges, right? And I hit 5 or 6 shots with each one. And then I said, oh, you know, a half swing with my 52 flies 80 yards, right? A half swing with my 56 is 65 yards, and a half swing with my 60 is 50 yards, right? So now I know that if I have those distances, or say I have a 70-yard back pin, I'm like, well, I don't want to get too aggressive. I don't want to like hit a, you know, a feel shot with my 60. I know that I can just grab a 56, make that, you know, half swing, and I should produce a shot that flies about 65 yards in the air, right? So to a back pin that's 70 yards, you know, that could be a good shot to have. And it's something I need to practice more, right? I think it's definitely important for scoring. So that's my current system. You don't need musical instrument skills when you're that good at golf. Well, I don't know. It depends on the day how good we are. Jackson said hi. Hey, Jackson. Yeah, of course I remember you. Any tips to keep your head down? Try to feel like you're looking at the spot where the ball was. But it's not the best. I mean, you don't need to keep your head right? I think it's important to understand that, like, you know, we're trying to mostly rotate around our spine, and our spine connects to our head at some point, right? Ideally, connected to the head. So, you know, you'll notice like Rory and even Jack Nicklaus, right? They have some amount of this like head turning to start the swing, right? Because again, we're trying to rotate around this angle here, right? So the head has to rotate a little bit, right, in order for everything else to move. So if you try to really keep your head down and not release it at all, right, you're not going to, you know, have a great time playing golf, right? But I think it's more important to keep your head, you know, on the ball in the backswing and then allowing it to release when you come through, right? But that's after you hit the ball, right? You got to keep your eye on it until then. Yeah, of course you remember Jackson. Yeah, all our OG watchers and listeners. I need new clubs. Mine are Cobra Junior. I'm 12. What clubs do you recommend? I would definitely recommend getting fit if you're serious about your golf. But I also recognize, you know, if you're in that age range, it can be tough. You know, equipment sourcing. You know, I grew up playing with you secondhand clubs. That can be a good way to go if getting fit isn't an option. But I don't have great like specific advice, unfortunately, in terms of saying like, oh, here's definitely some clubs you could try. Everybody's saying hi. Hey to you guys. Jacob says, thanks for the help. I appreciate loving your content and streams. Awesome. Well, if you guys are like Jacob and you're enjoying the stream, you want to like and subscribe, that would be super appreciated. We just smashed through 1,500 subscribers before we hit month 5 on YouTube, so it's happening, guys. We are going to keep doing this stuff. We're going to keep having fun with the streams, trying to share some knowledge. Funny you said 4. I'm mimicking your swing with my 4-iron. That is funny, DBP. Having a problem hooking my long irons, not doing it for any other club. Well, that's interesting, Kyle. That's a new one. I've not heard of hitting a big hook with the long irons. Again, I would say try to isolate it and say, you know, does something feel different? Am I setting up to these differently? You know, you can look on video, like make a swing with an 8-iron and then with a 4-iron, see if anything looks different. And if it doesn't, then from there I would say, well, you just got to train the movement more, right? So for a hook, you might put your ball like up in here, right? You know, trying to neutralize that path, right? Sorry, this way. You know, have it less from the inside and a little more neutral, right? That can help straighten out that big hook ball flight. Any tips or effective drills for practicing clean ball contact on chipping for that nippy one hop and stop shot? Yeah, good question, James. So again, for contact, I'm going to go back to this drill like with the tape, right? Or you could do this outside with a towel is another great way to do it, right? But give yourself some actual feedback so that you can start to train your body to say, oh, that's not the swing I wanted to make, right? In here, I've got this tape or this barrier, right, the towel, whatever it is, right behind the ball, such that if I did hit it fat, I'm going to hit that tape, right? It's going to go flying. It's not going to, we're not going to have a good time. And if you thin it, right, when you're out there practicing, you're going to notice because your ball is going to go screaming across the green. So I would start with a drill like that, right, and just practice nice solid contact. Because like you said, you're already on the right track. We need that nice clean contact if we want to, hit a spinny shot. What's your favorite club in the bag? Good question. It's probably driver most of the time, as long as, it's been a little up and down recently, but it is probably the best club in my bag. 60 degree. Love that club. I love hitting all kinds of different shots with 60 degree. You should make some mods. I think we do have some mods. I think we have at least one. I don't really know what the mods do other than like keep away the riffraff, which I try to do myself, right? I just don't have a lot of patience for, like the negativity and the mean stuff. Do you remember me? Yeah, we remember Jackson. Yeah, all of our returning viewers. Basic drive swing, just something reliable. Yeah, good question, Niall. Do you think I sliced my driver because I played baseball? No, I don't. I think it's probably just something in your swing, right? There's, some baseball players who hit big hooks and... But if you do play baseball, it's a good place to be starting from because of speed. All right, so let's answer Niall's question about the driver swing. And then we are going to hop off after this one. But, all right, Niall, so number one, if you're playing a cool course and it's your first time, and you're playing, with some work friends, it could be normal to get a little nervous, right? A little, like, oh, I don't want to make a fool of myself, right? I think it's better to acknowledge that and just say, hey, like I'm kind of nervous and I'm doing something different. And, just be present and understand that, like, yeah, if you're a beginner, you're going to hit some bad shots, but just try to enjoy the day, have fun. If you tell people, like, this is my first time on a golf course, right? 9 out of 10 people are going to be pretty chill and not really give you a hard time. Try to play quickly, try to look up some basic etiquette stuff, fixing your pitch marks and, replacing your divots, stuff that can endear yourself to your fellow playing partners. But again, in brief, with the driver, you don't want to knock it off the tee prematurely like I did. But assuming you don't do that, right? Basic movement here is imagine you were swinging a sandbag or a kettlebell, right? And you were trying to get some energy into it to go back, and then we're throwing it down our target line this way, right? So this is our kettlebell. We're trying to create a wide arc here, right? Because that's how we generate speed, right? So again, understanding that we're trying to move this arc around our body and then transfer that energy into the golf ball, right? So that's kind of the basic premise. So now, again, if you do have some time to practice beforehand, I would start with some slow swings, right? So learn how to hit the somewhat close to the center of the face and see your ball flying, moderately straight towards your target, right? So just some little, 50% swings. And that can be a great way to develop your technique to, see the ball flying through the air down the fairway nicely, right? The main thing that, if you're like, hey, I want one tip for the driver swing to not, hit like really big slices, right, is give yourself some space. Keep this club away from you for a while. You don't need to get it in here, right? A lot of people say, oh, we got to get the club, start the backswing with the club head. You want to actually try to keep it away from you. We want this nice wide arc, right? I want everything, far away from my hands to generate speed. So make sure that club head kind of stays outside, and you can practice this, in your bedroom. Just grab your driver and just practice, feeling like that club head, like you're going to point it at the ball, halfway back, right? So hopefully that helps. Unfortunately, guys, I do see more questions, but we're going to have to shut the stream off for now. We're going to do more of this hopefully tomorrow, if we can find some time. And yeah, appreciate you guys all being here. If you do want to like and subscribe to the video, the stream, check out the shorts. I'm super grateful for all your support, guys. Thank you very much for checking out the live stream. Hope you guys play well in your golf this weekend, and we'll talk soon.